That sounded very convincing. Welcome to the Toronto Beer Podcast with me, your host, Chris Schreier, and Mandie Murphy. How you doing, Mandie?
Hey, I'm good, Chris. How are you doing?
Good. What did you just pour in that glass that we got to hear you go pop and pour?
I poured a glass of Sunlight Park Saison.
I was pretty sure that's what you poured. I had one of those earlier today.
How'd you like it?
Oh, it's delicious. And somebody told me it was really high in vitamin C, which is good because I have a cold. And so I'm hoping that will be the cure right there. Done.
You sound a touch congested, but I can't confirm that there's any vitamin C in the beer. But hopefully it does the trick.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure actually there probably isn't much vitamin C, but it's nice to think about. So when did that hit? When did you bottle that off and get it in kegs?
I guess we got going with it at the beginning of the month. Yeah, at the beginning of May, we would have launched the beer and probably brewed like 3 or 4 batches of it by now. We're sort of brewing it nonstop right now, which is great. That's
pretty good. Have you automated the peeling process yet? Sticking the grapefruits on a turntable or something like that?
No way. Are you kidding? It's really fun to zest the grapefruits. Like everyone smells fantastic, and the building smells fantastic when we're done. But we got these really super sharp like potato peelers, so we're using those to peel the grapefruits, and they're so sharp that you're able to peel basically just the zest, which sounds strange. You're not getting any of the pith, the white pith, which is really nice. And then I just throw all of the peeled zest into a food processor, and it works beautifully.
Huh, that's wild. If you look through my Instagram, if you're creeping me one day, you'll see that pretty well every time I make marmalade, which is sort of like a yearly thing, it's normally sort of January or February, I always slip up when peeling citrus and nick off the corner and a bit of skin on a fingertip, corner of a nail and a bit of skin. It's terrible. It's like hell,
I should give you some of our gloves. We have these great gloves that we wear, and I used to cut my hands quite a lot when I was doing all the grapefruit zesting and the grapefruit peeling. But now we have the glove. So what happens is the glove gets a little nick at it, and then it saves your hand, and you could just grab a new pair of gloves.
Is that the those kind of Kevlar woven ones, or?
No, they're not even meant really for that. They're just like sanitary blue gloves.
Oh.
And it nicks the glove instead of your hand, and then you can just discard the gloves and get new ones.
We are killing it tonight. We had, of course, again, difficulty getting started, and now we're talking about kitchen implements. So that's fantastic. You want to know what I'm drinking?
Yeah, I'd love to know what you're drinking. Oh, you don't sound very good.
Yeah, I don't know if you probably could hear that. I'm drinking a hot toddy because, I'm sick and miserable. And I'm actually going away this weekend, so I really want to be healthy. But it sucks. No beer for me tonight, I don't think. I think just whiskey and water.
Instead, you're up late drinking and talking to me. That sounds like the road to recovery.
Absolutely. Although the thing is, I don't know if you are a believer in the hot toddy, but I find I sleep like the dead. Like I'm going to be nodding off by the end of this. It's going to be fantastic. I'll barely even make it up to bed, and then I'll be flat out. It'll be fantastic.
So just in case, what should I do if you fall asleep during the podcast?
Pop another Sunlight Park Saison. That'll probably do.
Deal.
Pop. So here's some news. Speaking of things that have gotten started, we got started obviously last episode, and so now we've got kind of all the usual sorts of stuff save one up and running. There's a website, torontobeerpodcast.com. We are on the Twitter. The Instagram, believe it or not, I should maybe take a gram of this while I'm doing this, and that's both TO Beer Podcast and on the Facebook too, with our once again our friend Mark Zuckerberg taking care of us tonight, having ongoing trouble, no luck with FaceTime or Skype, both sucking balls tonight. So here we are once again, Mark Zuckerberg. I believe that's you making my screen flicker. So I'm glad that you've joined us, and I'm glad everyone else has joined us too. So and the thing we haven't done, we're not on iTunes yet. Anybody who's ever submitted anything to iTunes knows that it's, pretty much a nightmare. So we're working on it. We'll get there sooner than later. For now, you can listen on the website or at SoundCloud. And and late breaking, a gentleman asked me on Bartel if he could download off SoundCloud. The answer now, yes, you can. I figured out how. So we're downloadable now. You can take it and stick it on your Zune media player and take it to work with you. So yeah. Anything you want to add to that, Mandie? Did I do a good job? I know you're in marketing. Did I get it all covered?
You did. All week long, all I could see was things popping up from the Toronto Beer podcast. It was stressful even just trying to follow all of it. So you were hitting all the social media channels, as they say.
That's what I like to hear. I like stressing out the user. That's what I normally aim for. I think, man, if I could raise this person's blood pressure, I'm doing my job. That's good. So
I'm not saying that the normal user gets stressed out. It's just me. I feel like I'm trying to keep up with you and being a bit of a slacker on the podcast here.
Speaking of making your blood pressure rise, Block 3, Sugar Bush, Brown Ale. It does have maple syrup in it. I got this. I looked it up on Rate Beer, and they had a commercial description that said something along the lines of like, just a straight up brown ale with a dash of local flavor in the form of maple syrup. So there you go, guys. Block 3, Sugar Bush, has maple syrup in it. If it's still around and you like the maple syrup, you get some in you. Did you only have the one bottle?
There were a couple of bottles, but the others were shared with the rest of the team at the brewery. So.
That's one of the things, I guess, when you have a baseball brewery, you pretty well have to be a good team player, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We get to share a lot of our beer with other breweries, and then we end up getting, in turn, beer shared with us from other breweries. And the idea is for us to all sort of enjoy it together at the end of the day.
Well, that's a nice idea. And you've picked up a new brewer, I saw.
We have, yeah. Our team is growing pretty quickly. We learned very quickly that we really underestimated the number of people you would need to run a brewery. And we've been growing the team very, very rapidly. So this week, Rob Welch joined us, most recently with Mill Street, also from Molson and St. Amboise. And he's just a fantastic, amazing guy. His training is actually DNA science. That's what he studied. And he's been bouncing around the brewing world, and we're very, very lucky to have him. He's amazing.
That's fantastic. I know, chemistry, obviously, and science and junk like that. It's pretty important. I don't really do that when I homebrew. Mark will testify to that when we would brew together, that I was pretty much useless at that stuff. But that's good. It's good. I can't wait to meet that dude. So yeah. Here's another thing. Date formats. You remember talking about this? Now, I will say you have to take this with a grain of salt, a grain of Wikipedia salt. But Wikipedia, and I mean, it's the first hit, does say that Canada actually uses all 3 formats: day, month, year, month, day, year, and year, month, day. Although your social insurance number application form uses day, month, year, and your tax return, which hopefully everyone filed, about a month and a half ago, would be year, month, day, which we agreed that one's actually pretty good, especially on something like a tax return that happens yearly. The day is not as important; it's the year. Oh, and sorry, the whole point though was the U.S. mainly uses month, day, year. Called it 9/11. Boom. How do you feel?
Like I didn't really know what I was talking about. Way to go! You win.
See, I don't work at a baseball themed brewery, so I don't have to be a team player.
That's fairly evident already.
I know, eh? Look at this. It's terrible. I'm a horrible person. Speaking,
did I get anything else wrong last week that you need to call me out on?
Nope. No.
Okay.
Wait, did you say that the California beer tasting was going to be a horrible failure?
I think so. That's just about as much faith as I have in you.
You would have gotten that wrong because it was massive. It was great. We had a fantastic time. We weren't able to get Stone beers because, LCBO. Need I say more? But we had a really good time, and we had 4 Californian beers and 2, I called them California-inspired beers. So we had Bo's Wag the Wolf, which is like a Hopfenweiss, and I don't actually know. Something else. It's escaping me now.
Just back to that Bo's beer. You shouldn't skip past it so quickly. That is such a good beer.
It is a fantastic, fantastic beer. I've enjoyed it every time I had it. I think this is 3rd year now they've made it, and it is just incredible. Really good. And it's at the LCBO right now, so you don't have to take our word for it. You go to the LCBO and you pick yourself some up. Anyway, June 20th coming up, we're going to do Saisons, and depending on how production goes over at a little brewery in Leslieville called Left Fields, we might have some Sunlight Park Saison in that tasting. So we'll see. We want to get in some kegs, actually. So Mark knows that. I gotta let him know we're ready to pull the trigger, guys. Mark, you're listening. I know you are, buddy. Pull the trigger. Pull it.
You can actually just order that through me because I take care of sales and marketing.
That's really funny. I just, when I hear sales and marketing, I assume it's all sort of like outward sale, like outbound sale, like not dealing with the accounts. I figured you'd make the accountant deal with all that nonsense because we're terrible to deal with.
No. It includes a lot more than just selling. We actually don't do really any outward selling at all, like absolutely zero. So requests come to us. We go out and meet with people, try to figure out if they'd be a good fit for us. And then it's really just order taking from there forward and building relationships. So everything from creating invoices to following up on payments on a regular basis. That's all sales and marketing, at least for us.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't have called you out so hard because I might have put myself in the wrong there. I might not be getting any kegs of Sunlight Park. So.
The Saison's in pretty high demand right now, so you'll have to be nice to me for the rest of the podcast if you'd like some.
Well, the good news is we're moving on to new stuff now, so I think that's going to happen. Actually, no, I was going to abuse you in the next segment.
Oh, good. Let's move right along. That's a great idea.
So I had in the spring notes only Cafe Spring Fest, and then I put, I think we decided I wasn't going to swear, so not going to swear, but really good. I bet it was really good. That's more or less what I said, just in cursive writing. And you said, I didn't even make it out. I bet it was awesome. It always is. Yep. Yeah, you're right. You didn't make it out. And yep, it was awesome. You missed it.
Were you there on the Friday or the Saturday?
I was there both, which was...
Oh, wow.
I know. And that was a challenge because I was trying to be like really good on Friday night because I had to get up pretty early to take my son to a rugby tournament out in Burlington, of all places. And so I thought I was really good. And then I woke up at like 3 a.m. with like just like a catastrophic headache. And I had to suck back some water. And when I woke up in the morning, it wasn't any better. It was maybe even worse. And, I'm trying to look cheerful because it's his first tournament and he's really stoked, and he's a cute kid. So, I don't want to break his little heart. So, but I was in a rough state, but I made it and we went out to the tournament. And while I was there, I deconstructed a bit, and I suspect what happened. Is I drank a lot, not a lot, because I just said I didn't drink that much, but a large percentage of what I did drink was a wild fermented cider from West Avenue. Mm. And I got a sneaking suspicion there might have been some bacterial stuff kind of having its way with me because I was in a bad state. But by the time it was time to go to the festival Saturday night, I was good, and so I went out and I was a little bit more naughty, but I actually came out on the other end in better shape. So made it to church, and everyone was happy, and it was a really good time. It's always a fantastic time. I found this time, I don't know why, but I found that inside felt super crowded, and I don't know if it was just people were, taking up more space, or if maybe the brewery tables were pushed forward a little bit, but yeah, I'm a little guy, and so I get bumped around at those things a lot. That would be my only complaint, but other than that, it was amazing.
How was the weather? Was it pretty nice?
Yeah, it got a little cool at night out on the patio, but it wasn't catastrophic. It was pretty pleasant. It was pretty nice. Saturday especially was just, pleasantly cool. You probably wouldn't have even needed like a sweatshirt. You would have been okay out there.
Okay, so everyone wasn't crowding around inside like they do at the Winterfest just because it was freezing outside. Yeah,
no, I actually got stuck in quite a slow moving lineup to get outside. Which again, this would also be put it under the the problems of success. Is the patio is pretty limited in its license capacity, and so there's often a lineup to get out there. And the good news is, you get a couple of sample cups in your hand, and you just drink them while you're in line and chat to the people around you. I had a nice little chat with a couple of guys who were pretty stoked to be there, and we talked a lot of different beer stuff. So it was really good. It was a really good time. I liked it. And the lineup,
it's great. It's been especially great since they've moved some of the beer tables inside, and so when you're standing around just waiting frantically to get out into the patio, you can actually enjoy some of the stuff that's there for the fest, which is awesome. Not as though their regular beer lineup is boring or anything. They always have a lot going on. So it's actually the first beer festival that Mark and I have not attended to pour at. We were both working the tap room, and Austin, our other brewer, he was there pouring. He sort of grew up and has been a regular at the Only, and he took that one on and managed that entire festival himself, which was it was pretty cool. So we spent the night at the brewery, and Austin took on pouring some cask ales, and some of our cans down at the Only. So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was
Although
fantastic.
I hated to miss it.
Yeah, it is a wrench. That's why I went the second night. I would have kind of made plans at noon not to go based on how I was feeling, but it's just too good. You got to go. You got to go check it out. So, next one coming up, I think is it in August? I don't know. You can look it up. Fabian's probably.
I'm not sure what month they're doing it. I'm not sure that it's been announced yet, but definitely it'll be the Summerfest. I think it usually lands in July, but it's sort of just up to Fabian to decide when it happens, and we usually get about a month or so's notice.
Right on. Yeah, I think you're right about the July thing. I was just thinking, I don't think the spring one's normally quite so late, but I don't know. It'd be great if it was a month and a half away. That'd be fantastic. As long as it's Fabian, if you're listening, not the weekend of July 25th, please, because I'm away. So let's not make it that weekend, okay?
Yes, please, let's not make it that weekend, because that's also the Toronto Festival of Beer. So.
Oh yeah, right. And I'm missing that.
That's everyone's sort of biggest beer festival to manage. So that'd be treacherous. So please don't do that, Fabian.
Fabian, executive decision here. It's not the weekend of July 25th, so you can just strike that from your calendar right now. Mandie and I have decided. So if you have any questions, you need any clarification, TO Beer Podcast on Twitter, you can hit us there. So you see this, you must have seen this, the craft beer. Oh wait, I'm looking at grocery store sales. Sorry, the first grocery store sale thing was about it's a bit of an older piece. Oh, you said, nah, it seems like a blip that will pass quickly. I think we should skip it. You know what? Skipped. It was about the union moaning that we shouldn't rush ahead 30 years into the process. So slow down. That's what their message was. I didn't put it in, but there's the craft beer. They've announced the LCB is going to open some craft beer specific locations. You see this?
I have, yeah. I've seen that they're going to open those. Actually, I've been hearing about it for a little while as part of the OCB emails that we receive. We've been hearing about the growler stuff that's going to happen down at Summerhill, which sounds pretty exciting.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. If growlers are your thing, I tend to think this is just sort of a preemptive strike, because I think the plan, I can't remember the number, but they have a number of them that they want to have open before the beer hits the grocery stores, which is kind of cute. I mean, I don't know how many new stores they've opened in the past 5 years, but I bet they're going to double that count before the beer store or the beer goes into grocery stores. This is my thinking, but you know what? It looks like something that's going to be pretty positive for craft beer fans, so that's good. I like
My understanding of it is that Summerhill's happening first as a craft beer boutique, or I'm not sure the exact name that they're using for the LCBO craft beer destinations. But the other, I think it's 25 stores across the province. The dates on those are to be announced.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably pretty obvious that, and I don't know, like I kind of skimmed the article and read enough to kind of form a half-baked opinion, but if you go into Summerhill, you don't see a lot of people walking out of there with tins of blue. That doesn't really happen there. So for them, I don't think it's much of a stretch to convert that over to craft beer. But good for them. It's great. And I actually end up at Summerhill more often than I would think, given that it's uptown and I'm not. But it's cool. Speaking of growlers,
why is that, Chris? Does it draw you? Does Summerhill draw you out because of the beer? Like they do have more rare or more difficult to find beers at Summerhill?
No. Sadly,
why do you go there? What's going on?
Well, there are events there for one thing. So they do a lot of media stuff. So like the Session Ghost launch was just there last week or the week before. I've lost track. But I went to that and it was fantastic. And they do that sort of stuff there. And then as well, I'm partial to a little bar across the street from Summerhill called the Monk's Table. And I like to go in there for a drop of ale every now and then. So I find myself in the neighborhood a lot. I'm choking here.
You okay?
Yeah.
Do you need a minute?
No, I'm going to make it. I think I'm going to make it. But we were talking because one of the things in this pilot project is a growler fill station, which, of course is, I don't know. I'm trying to think of a brewery that doesn't do growlers. Like, I don't think Black Oak does growlers, do they?
They do not. I can think of a couple that don't do growlers.
Okay, go for it.
Myself included. So Left Field is sort of anti-growler, at least for ourselves. I know there are people that love them. There are people that hate them. I think I understand why it's great for certain beer drinkers. If you really understand how to take care of a growler, it could be an inexpensive way to get a beer that would otherwise not be available in a packaged format. And you could take it home and enjoy it at home. So that makes sense, like just from a purely economic perspective.
Yep.
But there are so many things I dislike about growlers. I don't know, where do you stand on them?
Well, as an aside, before I tell you where I stand on them, I've seen this, and maybe it wasn't you. Maybe I saw people talking about it or something. But do you not refer to your swing tops as growlers? In like
no, what I tell our customers when I'm working the bottle shop is that it's the closest thing we have to a growler, but it's not a growler, although there is a bottle deposit. So it's a tiny bit confusing, but we're converting them.
Yeah, and I'm with you on that, to be honest with you. And let's go to that now. That's where am I at? Yeah. The thing is, people like them so damn much, and I am all for fresh beer. I remember a long time ago, years and years ago, going to Church Key. Not that many years ago, I guess, because they'd moved out of the upstairs of the church. The retail store was in the little side building that they added on. But I remember going there and getting growlers filled like right off the tap and taking them to the cottage. And I mean, to me, that's actually one of the places where I think a growler really excels. You know, you're on your way up Friday night and you swing in and you grab a growler or two. And then Saturday, whenever, 9, 10 in the morning, whatever, you open it up. And then you...
Sorry, hold on. You open up your growler at 9 or 10 in the morning on a Saturday?
At the cottage. And actually, no, okay. I'm backpedaling. Yeah, full stop. Yeah, sometimes you open your growler at 9 or 10 in the morning. You pour yourself a glass of beer.
Okay, to each their own.
I actually just did an interview on Wednesday with a trade paper for the convenience stores. It was a lot of fun. And I got to sort of hash out some ideas that kind of had kicking around. I haven't been able to write nearly as much recently as I want to, which sucks. So I've been doing other things and not being able to focus. But so getting to do an interview like that is really good because it means that I actually do get to kind of work through ideas and think things through and whatever. So I got to do that. And this started, I don't know. I mean, I've been aware of it and been annoyed by it for quite a long time. But I think sometime last year I was talking on 1010 and the interviewer, Jerry Agar, I made some passing reference to neo-prohibitionism, like just throwaway. And he jumped on it and he wanted to talk more about it. So he made me stay through the break and we came back and talked more about it. And he really went hard and I was really kind of antsy and I backed off. And then I thought about it afterwards and I was like, yeah, no, that was the wrong thing. I should speak my mind on this. So I have this thing about beer and alcohol in general. I mean, right now I'm consuming what I would define as medicinal whiskey. And I'm okay with that. And, you know what? I drink in the morning sometimes. And, I don't think that's a problem. Sometimes I put a beer in a coffee mug and walk down the street with my kid so that I don't have people bragging on me about having a beer on the sidewalk. Because God help you if you aren't drinking, with your curtains drawn and, I don't know, like 3% beer. This is ridiculous. And so what I kind of came to is that I'm just going to be a lot more vocal about this and say alcohol is not bad. People do bad things with it, but it's not bad itself. And all this social responsibility stuff. So anytime you have a conversation about like any of this stuff, like adding beer to the grocery store, the very first thing that people go to is social responsibility. Whoa, well, if you sell it at a convenience store, kids are going to be able to buy it. If you sell it at a grocery store, people are going to buy more and then they're going to drive drunk. And so for one, I think that that's probably one of the stupidest arguments in the world because I think it's pretty easy to verify how inaccurate that is. But then on top of that, let's suspend my disbelief for a minute and say, yeah, okay, maybe that will happen. We need to look at the causes of why that happens. Just saying, okay, well then we'll tighten down alcohol sales so much that it becomes inconvenient for people with substance abuse issues to purchase. That's not going to fix their substance abuse issue, right? The people who do the bad things that social responsibility tells us, whoa, you can't sell beer at that time of day because of social responsibility. If we as a province addressed those issues and actually provided some frameworks for people, particularly on the lower scale in terms of income, to seek out counseling and treatment, and if we actually address the root cause, then you remove that whole argument, right? If we're actually doing what we ought to be doing as a society, which is taking care of people, then the social responsibility thing goes out the window. So it's a bit like saying, you're bleeding copiously out of the neck right now. You got stabbed, with a sword in the neck. You're bleeding copiously. Well, what we're gonna do here is we're gonna not let you drink any water, because if you dehydrate, your blood's gonna thicken up and maybe it'll stop. And it's like, no, that's stupid, right? I know that's not a perfect analogy, but I wanted an analogy about getting stabbed in the neck with a sword, so I used it. But it sort of works, right?
I'm still having a hard time drawing the line between that and what you're talking about. I generally agree with what you're saying about just social responsibility and how we need to draw the line at a certain place. And just because beer is more conveniently available doesn't necessarily mean that society is, or that beer drinkers are going to be sort of running amok in the streets. That's just not the reality. Sure, there are certain problems associated with alcohol consumption and alcohol abuse in the hands of folks who aren't necessarily treating it correctly. But yeah, I completely agree with what you're saying. We need to address the core issues.
Yeah, exactly. And if we do that, if we can, as a province, really buckle down and spend 10 or 15 years really focusing on helping people out who have serious substance abuse issues and mental health issues, we actually, not only could we make a difference in the lives of the people who have easier access to alcohol, but we would, completely change the lives of some people who are living in some pretty dark spots. And I think that's a good thing. So that's where I'm at with that. Okay, let's go back to growlers because I sidetracked. Yeah, so I like them for things like drinking at the cottage, when I can open the growler in the morning and then finish it before I go to bed. I know it's not going to oxidize notably overnight. Like I could stretch it over 2 days. I know that's perfectly acceptable. But to me, the other side of it is that, like, your growler is like what? Like, it's not even 4 pints. So I can open a growler and finish one while watching a movie, to be honest with you, depending on what's in the growler. But yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at. I like your swing top bottles a lot. I picked up 2 of the Sunlight Parks and quite enjoyed one today. And I love swing tops because I like things that quasi explode. And so that's a nice touch. But yeah, so hey, if you're a brewer out there, nothing against you. And I know, like, you're not selling growlers at your location because people aren't buying them. So, more power to you. But yeah, it's something I don't do that much. Sometimes I'll get one from Amsterdam, I'll pick up one there, maybe some Cruiser. That's pretty good. But yeah.
That's a great beer, but I just hate growlers. I really do. Like, I hate pouring them. If you're pouring it from the tap, when you have that little device that sticks into the faucet and fills the growler from the bottom, it just looks terrible. Like, the foam comes up everywhere. It makes a horrible mess. It shoots all over the backsplash. I know there's these proper, and I've seen them at conferences, but there's these proper growler fillers that you can get. You stick the growler in and you close the little door and then it fills the growler. But the ones that I've seen, even at the festivals or the conferences that I've seen them at, I actually had to ask the exhibitor, like, is that how long it actually takes to fill? Because it seems fairly slow. That's a very long cycle. And they said, oh yeah, that's the fill rate. I thought, oh my goodness, I couldn't imagine doing that. I'd have to process like 10 other customers at the cash register before this person's growler was filled. So I hate it for that reason. As someone who's working in the tap room or the bottle shop, filling those things, it's a complete nightmare to deal with. But you're right, people love them. They absolutely love them. You don't know how many disappointed faces I see every day when they come in and say, do you do growlers? Do you have growlers? Will you fill my growler? Can you refill this 750 ml bottle from the tops? And the answer is always no. You just hate saying no to customers. The oxygen thing, I don't know that I'd really be able to detect it if I am consuming the growler properly and within like 24 to 48 hours. I don't think I would really be able to detect any oxygen if it's properly cleaned and you're storing it properly. But my biggest fear is that you can't rely on every single customer to treat a growler properly and to care for it properly. I don't know when I'm filling one if one's been properly cleaned. I can look at it and I can smell it, but you really don't know if it's been cleaned or sanitized properly. And there's only so much you can do while you're filling it to actually take care of it properly. And for me, I know you said you can finish off a growler during a movie. It's only 4 pints. For me, 1.89 liters, like a typical growler, that's a lot of beer. I don't know. Usually my limit in an evening would be 2 or 3 drinks. But I like to say to people, I cut myself off at 2 and it's 3 on special occasions. And usually when I'm drinking 2 or 3 drinks, I would like each one of those to be different things. I like to sort of explore and bounce around from between different styles, or drink a couple different examples of the same style in an evening. So I don't know, that's just too much beer for me. And even to share, I find it to be too much beer, because when I'm sharing with Mark, same thing, we like to bounce around to different styles and different beers. So very rarely do I sit down in an evening and want to have more of 1 or 2 of anything. Also, they don't keep for very long. So sometimes plans change. Like you can run into a brewery and grab a growler fill and think, yeah, I'm going to have this tonight. And then you phone up your friends and your plans completely change. Instead of going to a barbecue, you guys are going to go out to a bar or go to a restaurant and enjoy something together. And then your growler sits in the fridge and it's on day 3. It's not really great anymore. And that's sort of a shame if I've paid for beer. I've gone out of my way to purchase beer, especially a growler fill, which would typically, like, the advantage of a growler is that you're picking up a beer that probably isn't otherwise available in a packaged format. So you're probably looking forward to it, or you would consider it to be something kind of special. If your plans change and you're drinking that on night 4 or 5 instead, that's kind of crappy. Like it's not going to taste as delicious as it should. And the other thing with growlers, and the times that I have purchased them, I never finish them. I always try to reseal them. And I know that they shouldn't be resealed and kept, and I do it anyway because I'm like, oh, that's a great beer and I really want to have more of it. It never tastes as good when you reopen it. And for a regular consumer who doesn't necessarily know that you shouldn't be resealing it and consuming it later, maybe they've given it to somebody as a gift and that person doesn't know you shouldn't be resealing it and consuming it later, the beer just doesn't taste great. And what sort of impression does that give you of the brewery? I don't know. There are so many reasons. I could go on for another hour about the reasons I don't love growlers, but that's sort of why we've decided to not do them.
Let me add in, because you brought up something that I always forget, because I don't think I've ever been to a brewery and seen them do this. But if you walk into a brewery with a growler that, like, that's the thing. I know people in the States talk about this. It's like, it's your growler. You own it. It's unbranded or whatever. Or maybe it's branded with another brewery's logo or whatever, but it's like, it's your growler. And they just take it and stick it on the filler and fill it. That's the grossest thing in the world. Like, I can't even go there. Like, that's horrible. And like, I got into a conversation with some guys. I think it was, I hesitate to say in case it wasn't, but I feel like it might have been Hill, will fill personal growlers. And they apparently do a visual inspection. And they're like, yeah, that's good. If you go into Amsterdam, if you bring back one of Amsterdam's crazy big solid growlers and they're filling, right? Like maybe they've just gotten a keg of something, Springbok or something on. You know, it's not something that they have pre-filled in the fridge just yet. If you walk in with that growler, what they're going to do is they're going to take it from you and put it in an empty pile, and they're going to get a fresh growler that they've cleaned and filled with sanitizer and drain it and fill the beer into a fresh, clean, you know, properly sanitized bottle. I could not imagine trusting some, you know, bro walking in with a growler and looking and thinking, oh, is that a little chunk of yeast in the bottom, or is that like a seam? Oh, it's probably a seam, you know? And then as well, like, seriously, if you're at a brewery and they say, yeah, we're not going to fill this, you're going to be pissed. You're going to be like, no, fill it, right? The brewery basically doesn't have a choice. I mean, I'm sure they could be, you know, jerks about it. Be like, no, we're not filling this. This growler's gross. Or like, then they have to get in there with a brush and like take the time to clean it. That whole thing.
I think you're sort of right, Chris, with the Amsterdam example. I think most breweries, at least here in Toronto, that do growler fills, the ones who do them will only fill their own growlers, and I think often they'll do the swap thing.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's not for me. I just don't love it.
Yeah, man. Like I said, growlers have a place for me, but not often.
Yeah, to each their own. I hate seeing the sad faces that walk away and they really, really wish they could get a growler of something. But I don't know. It's just not for us. And to each their own. As a consumer, I could totally understand why it's appealing. Heck, when we came back from Portland, the Craft Brewers Conference last month, on our last night, we found a beer that we really, really loved. It was a double IPA by Fatheads, and we thought, this is so good. We have to share this with our team. So we got a growler fill and we brought it back and we drank it together as a team the next day. But only in the rarest of circumstances am I ever keen to really pick up a growler anywhere.
Yeah, I hear you. I'm with you. I know, like, and then there are places too. You go to like the Granite for a growler, and they're pre-filled, capped, and they have a shrink wrap on them. I think that's all done in the brewery with like a counter fill and stuff. It's, it's a very different system at different breweries. But okay, I think we've done this. Chris and Mandie, not big fans of the growlers, but if you are, hey, good for you. Go ahead, you enjoy your growler. As an aside, and actually, I'm going to say this one for you guys too. If you are the kind of person like me who takes a bottle or a growler or whatever, back to the brewery properly, when you empty it, here, just throw it under the tap for a minute, okay? Just give it a little swish out with some nice fresh clean water. Get any gunk out, just even residue of beer. Whether you leave it open and it dries into a nasty scuzzy film, or you leave it closed and God knows what happens to it. That just adds so much work for the people at the brewery. They have to clean and sanitize the bottles as if they're pretty dirty anyway. But if they go through that process and then they inspect it and it's still dirty, that just sucks. And that's gross. Also, unless they're sitting out in the garage, they stink. So don't do that, okay, kids? If you're drinking your swing top from left field, when you finish it, first thing, when you walk to the kitchen to put the glass in the dishwasher, just give the bottle a little swish out, okay? That PSA brought to you by the people who have to fill growlers and bottles at breweries and find what people do to their bottles disturbing and disgusting. So, hey, Mandie,
that's really kind of you, Chris. I appreciate that. I take tons and tons of bottle returns back every day, and I actually need to say that we're pretty impressed with the care that people take with the bottles that they do bring back to us. Most of them they're returned open and smells fairly clean. So I can tell that most bottles are being returned sort of rinsed and fairly quickly after they're packaged. And sometimes they'll come back to us with a little tag on them that has the packaged on date. And it's like something they bought 2 or 3 days ago. And it's pretty incredible. So way to go, Leslieville. Good job.
Well, you guys are just a clean bunch of people. I know. I don't know if
pretty much perfect in every way.
Pretty much. I'm not going to say the brewery name because I don't know if it's a bit of a graphic thing, and I don't want people thinking about this when they're drinking the beer. But I've been told by people who work the bottling line at a notable Toronto brewery, sort of the list of stuff that they've pulled out of bottles, or not necessarily that they've pulled out, because sometimes they just throw the bottle out because it's that gross. But like a half dozen cigarette butts that are soaked in stale beer. That's nice, guys. Thanks for taking care of that one. Used condoms. That's charming, right? Those ones are going straight in the garbage. Like, they're not even trying to reclaim those bottles. But people are idiots. And so it's good. If you're a left field customer, you give yourself a pat on the back right now. Keep on sending those bottles back clean. You don't have to worry about the cans, okay? You don't have to rinse those. I won't make you do that. You just take those back to the beer store. But yeah. Get those bottles clean. Hey,
that's horrifying. I have a trivia question for you. Do you know? I think there are probably more than one. But what's an item that cannot be removed from a bottle once it's inside?
Well, I've been told by. I remember a long time ago on the Steam Whistle Brewery tour, they talked about how they actually had to fabricate sort of a tool to get crushed bottle caps out, that they wouldn't come out in the standard rinse procedure. So is that what you're thinking?
That's one that I learned on a Steam Whistle tour, but on a super early iteration of the Steam Whistle tours many, many years ago, we learned of another that it's actually impossible to get out of the bottle. And I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this is still the case, but if I recall correctly, the bottles actually just get discarded if this item's inside. Any other guesses?
Is it a baby mouse?
No. I don't know what they do with those.
Hopefully, yeah.
Hopefully they discard them.
Yeah. I'll tell you a story in a minute, but okay, I give up though. I'll know because I feel like I heard this too, that there was something that was just flat out impossible. So give it to me.
It's a freezy wrapper. You know, after you've had a freezy in the summer and then you roll it right up like a corkscrew and you drop it in the bottle, it'll completely expand inside the bottle, and it's pretty impossible to get out.
Yeah, you're telling me they can't just reach in there with a forceps and like pull it out?
I don't know.
It might just be one of those things that's not worth the effort. Like, you just chuck it. But hey, let me just backpedal for a minute here. Stop putting stuff in your bottles. They're not the garbage, okay? So rinse them out, let them dry, and leave them alone. That's what I'm saying. So here's a funny dead mouse story. I was driving home one day, and there was, a little pile of garbage out at the curb early on like the day before garbage day. And I saw why am I blanking here? A carboy. There's a carboy, like a 5-gallon carboy in it. If you don't homebrew or whatever, a carboy is like it's like a water cooler jug, but it's made out of glass. Although there are plastic ones in it too. And you ferment the beer in it. You put it in there and you put a little airlock in the top. So I saw this one. So, obviously screech on the brakes, and it was dirty. Like it had been living outside. And there were actually some leaves had gotten into the bottom. So the bottom was kind of caked in leaves. Right. And it was really dusty and rain spotted and stuff. So, but it was this sort of blue tinted glass. It was really beautiful and it was quite heavy. So I picked it up and I threw it in the car. I took it home and I just stuck it in the garage. And a couple weeks later, a buddy of mine was over and we were going to brew up a beer. And so I got it, I soaked it and some of the leaves started releasing and stuff and pouring it out. And the leaves were actually coming out because they're pretty broken down. But once all the leaves were out, yeah, there were 3 dead mice in the bottom of it. And they were like mummified and flattened. And you could see like the outlines of their skeleton and stuff like that. So I didn't really know what to do.
So naturally you made a really obscure, unique one-off beer. Dead
Mouse IPA. And then Dead Mouse came and drank beer with me, and it was the most amazing thing ever. No, that didn't happen. But no, I got out a pressure washer, and I got them out. And then I, probably about mixing peracetic acid, for sanitizer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I took the most, highest concentration recommended, and I doubled it. And I let it sit for about 3 days, and I scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and scrubbed and kept on doing that. So I felt I know it was clean. It's just, mentally there's this thing. And the other thing is, once it was clean, it was this beautiful sort of teal or like almost aquamarine blue tint to the glass. And it's fantastic, except it is like a mil or maybe even less too small to get my auto siphon into. So I have to get a little bit creative. I do a lot of pumping and stuff just with straight tubes, but I can't get my auto siphon into it, which sucks. So, but yeah, if you ever had a beer that I made, there's a chance it came out of a carboy that had some dead mice in it. So cheers to Bob and Doug.
That's what that was. I thought it was super delicious.
Yeah, it was tasty and a little bit of protein. So that's interesting. Hey, let's move along. And this is a cool one. I like the way this is going to go. I think we're going to go lower to higher, which is there's this whole thing, talking about in the States, what's craft beer? And a lot of people, I had people who were not beer people sending me the link to the story on the guy suing Blue Moon or suing Coors because, he thought that Blue Moon was craft beer, and it's not because it's made by Coors. And so it's not craft beer. So he's suing them for some, ridiculous sum. I don't have the story pulled up here, but it was stupid. But anyway, and this is this ongoing thing. And I often dodge this question. I just say it's not that important. But talking about sort of like what defines craft and what we think about it. So why don't you jump in? You are, by the way, Mandie, a craft brewery as far as I'm concerned. And I think most people would agree with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure that you and I see eye to eye on this, but I guess we'll figure it out as we go.
Oh, this could be good.
I tend to agree with the Brewers Association out of the U.S. We are a member of the Brewers Association, but I tend to agree with their definition of a craft brewery, which states that your annual production needs to be, I don't know, I think it's like 5 or 6 million barrels or less, which basically just includes every craft brewery, including the very largest in the U.S. So that definition would obviously be different in Ontario or in Canada, where breweries tend to be a lot smaller.
Yep.
So you can't really go by the barrel benchmark that they have in the US. But I think that the independent thing is really important. So you need to have less than, I think it's 25% of your ownership of the brewery needs to be controlled by someone who is not, or a company that does not own anything other beverage alcohol company that's not a craft brewer. So that would prevent like brands like Shock Top or Blue Moon being classified as craft brewers. And then generally your brewing methods and your ingredients need to be traditional. And so those things I think are pretty important. And I don't know, I think the way I make my drinking decisions tend to just skew toward craft beer. So things that I would consider are things like, does it taste good? Is it a style I like? Is it relatively fresh? Like, when was it packaged? Is it fresh? What are the company's business practices? Like, when you're drinking hyper-local beer, I think you could think of the companies themselves, and you and I being immersed in the industry. Like, are they nice people? Do they treat their employees well? Do they operate with integrity?
Do they actually make good beer?
Right, and that's the first thing I always think of. Like, does it taste good? Even sometimes I'll and I'm a sucker for packaging, but sometimes I'll even choose a beer based on, does it look good? But that will never be true if I don't agree with the company's business practices, and if they treat people well. Do they operate legally or with integrity? So there's all these other deciding factors, I think, for us in the beer industry as you get more and more immersed in it. But I think oftentimes macro beer companies will fall to the bottom of that list more often than not. And I don't know, I'm the first one to remind folks of the fact that like these are people too, and they have people who work for large breweries, and Mark was one of them for a year or so. They have families, and they are just like you and I. They're not evil, and they're not the devil. But just generally speaking, my number one criteria for choosing a beer is, does it taste good? Is it a style I like? And generally speaking, I shy away from light lagers. I actually didn't enjoy beer before I discovered craft beer because I just don't like that style. And that's what 80+% of the beer in Ontario is. So I thought beer was gross. But just back to the craft thing and the Blue Moon, I think, I don't know, I believe very strongly in honest advertising practices and being very authentic and real with who you are to the public. And the fact that a company like Blue Moon doesn't actually even reveal anywhere on their website that they're affiliated with AB InBev or Molson Coors, rather, it's like, that's a serious concern.
Yep. So here's my thing. What I think, especially in the States, there had to be somebody come along and make some regulations about the definition. And I'm actually curious, just this moment I started thinking, I thought, well, so what's the deal with this craft term? Is it like they must have, I don't know enough about legal stuff, like trademarked, or it's like it's a trade name or something that they've protected somehow? The same way that, with champagne, you can't call it champagne unless it's, fits the definition from France, even if you're making it somewhere else. So I'm curious. I mean, obviously there's clearly a precedent there, so good for them. They've figured out a definition. Here's what I don't like about it. I think, and here's something I'll say. I cannot think of an example, save maybe two, depending on how you split it, of a brewery that produces massive, mega beer in the States, in volume, I mean, that I would define as a craft brewery. That said, Boston Beer Company and Yuengling would be pretty close. These are, again, nothing compared to the global production of, say, Anheuser-Busch InBev. But they are not small brewers, and they're independent, and they use traditional methods and all the good tick boxes. The only thing they had going against them was they kept on getting bigger. And so the Brewers Association kept changing the number, recognizing that a brewery can be really big and still be a craft brewery. And so really what the Brewers Association is doing is they have picked a group of breweries and basically said, you will never be able to call yourself a craft brewery because you are too large. I mean, if you go to the States, I don't know how thorough they are, but I guarantee you there are a number, because there's like over 2,000 breweries in the States, a number of breweries in the States that probably are predominantly extract breweries. There's at least one I know of in Ontario that I think is often stuck under the craft brand, but it's an extract brewery. They don't have a mill. There's no grain. I've been. And to be honest, they're in an area where really complex, challenging beers aren't going to move. So they're selling beers to the people who come into their place, and they're not particularly bad. They're just not great. They're sort of one-dimensional extract brewers. If you don't know a lot about brewing, extract is like they make a syrup from malt, and you just mix that in with water rather than actually having to go through the process of mashing the grains, which admittedly is time-consuming and can be challenging. So what the Brewers Association has done, though, is basically said, well, you guys never get to be craft brewers. And these guys who were craft brewers, we're going to keep shifting the goalposts. And they get to be craft brewers because we like them, but we don't like you. And so that sucks. That's stupid to me. It completely undervalues the entire process. Then when you move into a place like Ontario, I get it. If we were to use BA, Brewers Association standards, there are some really clear delineations. And so the one I always go to is Creemore. Creemore is not a craft brewery, according to the Brewers Association, because they're owned wholly by Molson Coolers. So they're not owned, they're not independent. Creemore makes fantastic beer, some world-class beers, in fact. And they craft them. Like, these are traditionally produced. In fact, their volume is probably still small enough that they would fit the BA definition. The only thing that they have going against them is that they sold to a major brand. Same with like Goose Island, or who was it who just went? Elysian or whoever, right? Just sold somebody else.
Elysian, yeah.
Elysian.
I think I don't know, Chris, I don't agree, because I think you're equating craft beer with good beer, and not all craft beer is good, and not all corporate beer is bad. But and I agree. I think Creemore makes some fantastic beers, but I wouldn't consider them craft beer. They're not independently owned, and they're owned by a company that basically owns and controls the distribution of beer in Ontario, and potentially unfairly so. And so I just don't think we're on equal playing ground with a company like that, and it's not necessarily fair. They have insane lobbying power, and I think I just think it's incorrect for people to equate craft with good. I think generally that is good for craft brewers, that the general public thinks craft beer is good beer, or craft beer is that crazy flavorful beer that I may be interested in exploring, and that's okay for us as craft brewers. But I think, I don't know, it's not always correct to equate craft beer with good beer and macro beer with bad beer, because there are some macro beers that are fantastic and there are some craft beers that are terrible.
I think another issue with it that I have is the sense that basically what's happened is they've co-opted the word craft, and they've set to it a definition that, I mean, I don't agree with. And so I don't think size has any impact on your craftiness. I'm actually curious. I'm not going to look it up because I'm holding my mic and I feel really ill right now. But if you look at a company like Hacker Shore and Paulaner, they're the same company. They're co-owned. I wonder, but I wouldn't be surprised if their volume exceeds the Brewers Association maximum. So then the question becomes, well, what does the Brewers Association say about Hacker Shore? Is Hacker Shore craft beer or is it not? They would say it's not. And I would say, well, that's stupid. And especially to people who aren't part of this massively insular little community, when they hear the word craft, they're not thinking likely about ownership, and they're not thinking about volume. They're thinking just about how the beer is made. And so you're right. There are craft beers that shouldn't be called craft beers because they're not made to a good enough quality. But you have other companies then, like Hacker Shore, like Creemore, who to me are craft brewers, despite not fitting the definition based either on ownership or volume. So I as you say, I mean, I don't think this is something we're going to resolve or one of us is going to convince the other tonight. But to me, if they came up with a different term, I don't know, maybe I would feel better about that. But you know what? And I hated the term, but people called it like microbrew, right? You remember that? Everyone talked about microbrew.
Mm-hmm.
That, at least to me, talks about the volume issue. Doesn't talk about ownership, but it just, I don't know. At least when somebody then, when you present them with this, oh yeah, Bud's not microbrew. Well, of course it's not. It's giant. You do start running into problems because, of course, Sam Adams is giant. Not as giant, but it's pretty big. Moving along, and this kind of ties in a little because, we were talking about Creemore and them being owned by Molson Coors. It's the Molson Indy again, kids, which I was stoked when Muskoka and Amsterdam cracked that and got to be the beer sponsor. And I actually don't think I ever even really followed up. And I mean, even if you do, they're going to say, yeah, we had a really good time and people were really impressed or whatever. But I mean, I used to go to the Molson Indy as a kid. And to me, that's not a place that you're going to move a lot of IPA. I don't think. I could be wrong. I haven't been in a while, so correct me if I'm wrong. But my perception is, I think in this case, Molson Coors is probably a pretty sensible sponsor for the Indy. Agree?
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree. I think sponsorships in general just sort of work that way. Like, I think major events and festivals see sponsorship as a revenue stream, and what is craft share out in Ontario? 8% at best. So more than 90% of the population is not, or the beer drinking population is not drinking craft beer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually referenced that in that interview I talked about earlier, the industry paper for the convenience stores. I don't know if you remember this, but when the convenience stores kind of put forth their proposal, I don't know, 5 or 6 months ago maybe, they actually suggested that they were willing to dedicate 30% shelf space to craft or small or whatever you want to call
brewers.
It. Which is insane. Like, that, making every store do that means that a lot of stores are going to have old code products sitting around. That is just like, I would feel bad for shops that had to, like, that were afraid of getting inspected. And so just through, a flat of blonde and a flat of 416 and a flat of steam whistle cans and whatever to fill out their 30%, and then just like they sit there in the back getting dusty, nothing happening. There would undoubtedly be some shops like what happens in Quebec that would actually probably stock a lot more than 30%, and that'd be fantastic, and people would seek those out. But right across the board, saying every store has to stock that, I thought was a pretty poor idea. And it was based on exactly that. I was going to say, when you said the numbers, I thought it was 7%, but it's there. It's like below 10% of the market drinks what we would define as craft beer. And it's really easy to forget that we live in a really small little bubble around craft beer. And the reality is, a lot of people out there just want to drink something that's cold and fizzy and maybe a little bit sweet and call it a day and get drunk. Like, that's the defining characteristic for them. And I think, we need to be working on that. We should be introducing people to new styles, and having some amount of forced product in a store probably would help with that to some extent. But yeah, these huge volumes, even the provincial one at 20% at the grocery stores, I'm just like, and I don't know if we talked about this last time. I've talked about it on my blog and stuff. Like, does that mean that the grocery stores are going to have to waive their fees? Because what if every small brewer goes, no, I'm not going to pay you fees? What are you going to do? Like, hold them ransom? You're going to put my products on your shelf for free because I'm not going to pay you to do it. Like, and grocery stores have disgusting fees. So I don't know if it's a real possibility or not.
They do, but it is a complete negotiation process. So certain categories have disgusting fees, and other categories where there are fewer suppliers, or just, I guess, generally fewer suppliers, or suppliers with less means, listing fees tend to be lower. It really does vary pretty greatly by category when you're looking at it from a packaged goods perspective.
Yeah, I don't know about beverage, but I know a guy who got into producing fudge, and they had some contacts in a couple of different grocery stores. And at the end of the day, the only stores I think they sold into were Sobeys and Longo's, because even though they were an ultra specialty product, it was going to be like a grab and go, like a point of sale type item at the bakery counter or whatever. They weren't even looking for shelf space. They just wanted to get listed. Loblaws, Metro, Walmart, those guys had such insanely high fees and then sales requirements. It was basically like, if you can't sell a skid of your product at the end of the week, just come pick it up and you're out. And maybe, like I say, I suspect grocery stores are going to have to give a bit here because, like, think about it. What if you approached a grocery store and they said that to you? Okay, Mandie, you're going to drop off 2 skids of Maris cans. Like, what's your price point for us on that? Like $250, or I don't know what. Let's call it $250. Well, actually, no. We're going to make that about $120. That per can is the listing fee, we'll call it, or it's a solid number, but it works out to that. And yeah, they better be sold. And if they're not, you don't get back in. Like, that's not an appealing proposition for a small brewery,
Yeah, the reality is for a brewery of our size, and we are a pretty tiny brewery right now, even with our full expansion plans, like long term, we intend to be a pretty tiny brewery. The grocery stores are just not of interest or a reality for us, just because of the volume. Like right now, I can't even satisfy 10 LCBOs. So what makes you think I'm interested in grocery stores? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so that's the reality of a lot of small breweries, is there's not a ton of capacity. There's more. You see some of the medium-sized craft breweries in Ontario undergoing pretty significant expansions right now, and they're sort of preparing and ramping up for these changes that are coming. And that's fantastic, because we're going to need those breweries to be able to take advantage of that if craft beer is really going to be available in a big way, and if the market's actually really being opened up and we are getting more access to the consumer. But the vast majority of small breweries, I think, in the OCB, I think there are more than 25 or 30 breweries that are in the smallest volume range within the OCB.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
that's the majority of them. If you look in the other volume ranges, there are like 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 breweries in each of the volume categories as you grow larger and larger. But most of the breweries are all lumped together in this one very small volume range.
Maybe it's time to switch up those definitions, but that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, it's something that we're working on.
Yeah. Hey, you're going away this weekend. I am too, but where are you going?
I am going to Buffalo, right across the border down the QEW. We're doing an amazing trip it's a road trip to the Buffalo Bisons game. So for those who aren't baseball nerds like myself, the Buffalo Bisons are the Toronto Blue Jays AAA affiliate team, or I guess commonly known as the farm team. And some of the excellent Jays players that you may have seen up at the Rogers Center last year, like Munenori Kawasaki and others, are on the regular roster of the Buffalo Bisons. And so last year we did a bus trip down to the game, and they have pretty fantastic beer available right across the border at Coca-Cola Field. So we're doing another one this year, and it's fun. Every year the trip gets a little bit bigger and bigger. The first year that we did it wasn't actually an official left field thing, but we had just launched the brewery in March, and sometime in the summer we decided to take a trip down the QEW to go to Coca-Cola Field and catch a Bisons game. And we took the delivery van, so we have a passenger van. It seats 8 people. We threw the seats back in the van, and we went with our closest friends. 8 of us went down to catch a game at Coca-Cola Field. The unfortunate part was that Mark was the only one insured on the van, and so he had to drive. Unfortunate for him and not the rest of us, but it's a really great time. They have a craft beer kiosk down there that has beers from Founders and the U.S. version of Great Lakes, Brooklyn, Ithaca, Pyramid, Long Trail, Flying Bison. Like, there's some really great craft beer that you can get down at the stadium. And it's a really good time. You're so close to the action, and you're almost basically on the field. And the quality of the I know I'm sounding like a huge baseball nerd, but the quality of the baseball is amazing. It's like you can hear the ball hitting the glove every time. You're just that close. They're playing on real grass, and it's just a real experience. It's a lot of fun. So we did that the first year. Last year, we took a bus trip down. It was a 32-passenger van that I booked, or I guess a 32-passenger bus. We had 2 craft beers from left field on the bus. And then we actually got to go to craft beer happy hour down at the game, which was pretty cool. So with the exchange rate, it was insane. Craft beers were for a 16-ounce pour. It ended up being $1.80.
Oh, wow.
Canadian was the conversion, because they were accepting Canadian at par and $20 denominations. So it was insane. And it was a really, really fun time. And so this year we've upped the size of the bus. So we're taking 56 people down to the game, and we're departing and we're returning to left field. So the bus actually comes and goes from the actual brewery. So it'll be a good time. We're excited.
That's amazing. I actually wanted to go last year, and as always, I don't get to do stuff like that. I'm a lame wad, but I thought it looked like a lot of fun. And there's just something I think about going to a baseball game with people like that, kind of the common spirit. It's pretty good. I like that. It's pretty exciting. And it's sold out, you said, right?
Yeah, the trip sold out much more quickly than we had expected. We've been asked if we have a waiting list, and we've been asked if we will add a second bus, but we also like to the reason I do it is so that I can go to the game and I don't have to drive, to be honest with you. It's not a money-making venture. We just really like to break even on it. And so I've been asked if we'll add a second bus, and it just ends up being a bit unmanageable and unruly. Like 56 people, that's a lot of passengers that are sort of under my care.
Yeah.
And so we really wouldn't be looking to add another bus at this time, but there is another game late in the year that if this one goes well, there are no major problems, then I'll look to schedule a second bus trip for the year, because it's just it is so much fun. It's such a good time.
Well, if you're on the bus this weekend, you heard it first here. Behave well, please, because you could go again. Don't be a goofball. Rinse your bottles out and be a good kid, and we can all go in the fall or late summer or whatever. I myself am going to, and you'll love this because I know you love proper terminology and branding and that sort of stuff. So I'm going to Ontario's Southwest this weekend.
Ontario's Southwest.
Yeah, that's what we're calling it now. So
where are you headed? Where are you off to?
Sorry, pardon me there. Yeah, I'm going down to London and then to Sarnia, and so I'm going down Saturday. And I've been asked by a company to go down and do a little tour and write up an article for the. I should have really pulled this up before I did this. I might edit it in after, but if I got it wrong, I'm going to cut this part and edit it in. So I think it's oswculinary.com or .ca, and they're running a contest, and it's like it's $1,500 3-night winery tours and cider tours and brewery tours and cheese tasting and all sorts of good stuff. So to promote that, they're getting a bunch of different writers to go take a weekend down in Ontario's Southwest and soak it up. So I'm going to check out 3 breweries. I get to go to Forked River, Creative Fools. No, it's not Creative. Refined Fool Brewing.
Refined Fool.
Yeah, that's what it's called. Again, I should really make notes. And Toboggan, which is very new. I think I spoke to the guy on the phone. He said they've just been open for about 3 weeks or 4 weeks, I think. So very new brewery.
Yeah, it hasn't been very long.
So that's pretty cool. And of course, when in London, guests of the Toronto Beer podcast like to eat at Milos Craft Beer Emporium. If you're in the London area and you want a tasty dinner, that's where you're going to go. And so that's where I'm going to go hang out with Milos a bit. He is he is as big a champion for craft beer as anyone you're going to meet. He is an amazing guy. So he's been pouring amazing craft beers in London at first Gambrinus Bistro and then at Milos Craft Beer Emporium for years and years, since before I came on the scene anyway. So that's pretty cool. And I'm also going to nip across the border while I'm in Sarnia. There's apparently a place called Ryan's Party Shop. Anyone want to confirm that? Ryan's Party Shop, and it's apparently the Port Huron craft beer destination. So I'm going to go pick up some cases of beer and bring those on back. And
that sounds like a good time, but the name's a little sketchy.
I know, Ryan's Party Store. Hey, let's party. It's funny because when I heard it, what my mind immediately went to was like a Balloon King party store, like with streamers, like confetti cannons and stuff.
Exactly what I thought of. Tons of wedding party favors.
That's right, yeah, and like Halloween costumes like 12 months of the year and stuff. But no, I suspect by party they mean party. So I'm going to go
different kind of party.
Yeah, I'm going to stay in London and have a really good time with that. So if you follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook and stuff, you're going to see a lot of pictures of that coming up, and then I'll have a post up about it next week. And it looks like a really good time, and I'm admittedly pretty stoked because I've been doing this for a long time, and there's been little spikes here and there of opportunities to earn a bit of money doing something, but this is actually, it's a paid gig, so I'm pretty stoked on that. So I'm actually 1 inch closer to my goal of maybe being able to pay my server fees for the year. So that's good news. So
awesome, Chris. Anytime you get to get paid and hang out with Milos at his place is amazing.
Yeah, I'm
very few people actually get to do that, so it's even cooler than you're letting on.
I know, it's pretty awesome. I think part of the problem right now, I'm so sick, and I'm just thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, I gotta get better. And so on that note, I think we're gonna knock this on its head and thanks for joining us. A little bit shorter than last time, I think. So, had some people note sort of, I don't know, not quite critically, but it was mentioned. Oh, that's a pretty long podcast you did there. And I said, really? It was almost 2 hours in raw. Well, we cut it down quite a bit, but we're only at an hour 17, and we had technological problems. I would be surprised if we were even over an hour. So I think we're doing good. So time to call it. Mandie, have a safe trip.
Thank you. You as well. It's been fun. Thanks again to Mark Zuckerberg for facilitating this podcast.
Mark, when you're up in Toronto next time, you let us know, man. I don't know. People have asked me about this too. Like, do you want to do guest spots? I'd come and do a guest spot on the podcast, and people who I'm quite fond of, in fact. And my answer so far has been we don't know what we're doing, and I don't know if guests necessarily are going to be something we'll do. Maybe, I don't know. But Zuck, if you come to Toronto, buddy, we will have you on the podcast. Or if you just want to jump in anytime, like just cut in right now. Do you want to say goodbye, Zuckerberg? No, he doesn't. But
did your lights flicker too?
No, did yours?
Yeah.
Zuck said goodbye. Okay, thanks, buddy. You
only to me.
You go get yourself an Alpine Duet now, and have a good night, Mark. Everyone else, thanks for joining us. Toronto Beer Podcast. We'll talk to you again in about 2 weeks. Bye.